In the 150-year history of football, the game has evolved because some players are capable not just of scoring, but also providing assists, and others have shown a talent for defending and for building the game. And as these kinds of players emerged, so too did the coaches who could use these talents to create a different playing model. Guardiola. I like my teams to play good positional football, but also have the ability to defend tightly in their own half if the situation demands it, and to be able to switch from attacking through positional play to crossing to their forwards so they can score with headers. That's the kind of flexibility I want to see, and it's something I need to keep working on, although I did get Bayern very far down that road. My ideal is that my team is able to switch between all these different approaches and be confident and comfortable in each. Cerullo. It's definitely true that evolution only happens when you have coaches with unconventional ideas. But these men also need to evaluate the impact of their ideas in action. And you do that by using players who haven't been disciplined to think only in terms of attack and defense. It's those kinds of players who've shown that it's possible to do things differently, and that in turn has allowed coaches to develop the game using a range of diverse ideas and playing models. MP. So it's undisciplined players who are the basis of all this evolution. Cerullo. To my mind, yes. These are the guys who've excited the coach's curiosity, whose attitudes have inspired him to observe, reflect, and analyze, and then make specific changes. Obviously, a more conventional coach isn't going to come up with these ideas, and he's also unlikely to see the potential in an undisciplined player. I mean undisciplined in the sense of the idea not being hidebound in the idea of attack-defense. In reality, of course, this type of player is the catalyst for change, because a smart, imaginative coach will watch him and suddenly have a light bulb moment. He'll say, "Aha! So it's possible to do this differently." And that's when he begins to develop new ideas and constructs which lead to the introduction of innovative tactics and strategies. And that means the whole game advances. Guardiola. I don't expect to play the same way as I did in 2009 or 2011, because although I know I'm a better coach today than I was then, so are Conte and Klopp and all the rest of them. And the players all know much more than they did 4 years ago too. They have much more expertise these days. So how do we define the ongoing development of football? Well, I'd say it's the process of synthesizing all the disparate playing models, although this never happens in a linear or continuous way. If you look back, there have been seasons where attacking teams and teams who play positional football have dominated, but at other times, it's all been about the defensive sides or those who play a very direct game, or even those who just know how to play given the particular circumstances of a game and exploit every chance they get, like Portugal in the 2016 Euros. This is how it's always been and will continue to be, but we mustn't confuse a trend with what's really happening in terms of the game's long-term development. We'll see different trends come and go, and a particular style of game may flourish in any one season for 1,000 different reasons. This may happen year after year and go on for a long time, but it won't change the direction of football, which has been the same for the last 80 years. Football will continue to try to integrate every single playing model until we have achieved the ultimate aim, integrated or total football, the kind of liquid football I've referred to before. Let's look at some specific examples of what I'm talking about. In the 1940s, Carlos Pucel, the brilliant player who was the inspiration for River Plate's Máquina, aspired to playing this kind of total football. Everyone, all players, should be markers when they lose the ball and be attackers when they have it. Discipline in football isn't a rigid thing, it's elastic. Elastic discipline. The tactic of the lineup should be 1-10. A keeper and 10 outfield players. 10 outfield players who can fit anywhere, play any role. Not a rigid formation which only works if you use it against another rigid formation. It's the only method that's really effective. As soon as you know that you have the right kind of footballers, you organize your team so that everyone goes up the pitch and everyone goes back. You can change any player for any other player. It's football for all times and all places. Pucel clearly advocated the 1-10 formation, the seed of total football. About 15 years after Pucel was speaking, Hungary trounced England 6-3 in a match at Wembley, therefore provoking an ideological crisis in a nation which considered itself the birthplace of football. At the time, Hungarian coach Gustav Sebes explained, "I plan to go out and attack, using the 4 strikers plus Nandor Hidakuti, an attacking midfielder. I kept a certain fluidity in terms of my players' positions, and the English defenders were totally nonplussed. I wanted my wingers, Budoy and Zibor, to go back down to help the defence whenever necessary, while Puskás, Kosic and Hidakuti moved all over the field, drawing the English defenders with them. That then left lots of gaps, and I instructed Bošić to take advantage of those spaces. That was my plan." That Hungary side played a new, challenging kind of game which came pretty close to total football. 2 years after the Wembley defeat, Willy Meisel wrote Soccer Revolution, in which he explained how he saw the football of the future. Meisel was a highly respected journalist and an expert in football. He was also the younger brother of Hugo Meisel, one of the most significant figures in football in the first part of the 20th century, who managed the astounding Austrian national team of the 1930s, the Wunder team, and who coached with Englishman Jimmy Hogan, who himself was the inspiration behind the marvelous Magyars. In his book, Meisel says, "It's necessary to substitute individualism with the wider fundamentals of team play. The model of the future will be the whirl. I don't think of the whirl as being a system. It's more like a tactical approach that will do away with all the individual systems of football. Players have to see the team as an orchestra. Primitive football will be transformed into a fast, breathless game which is very specialized. Continuous action and constant changes will be the norm. The game, which until recently was mostly about individual talent, will become a collective game which can be summed up in one phrase: integrated talent. Tactics in the future will be about the flow of the game, and football will move very fluidly in every direction. There are so many examples of this already starting to happen. To execute the whirl, which will demand constant motion, every player will be required to match the work rate of his teammates without any time limit." Almost nobody in England at the time took any heed of Meisel's words, and in the main, no useful lessons were learned from the Hungarians' dazzling performance at Wembley. Interestingly, Manchester City was the only English club to react, and between 1954 and 1956, they implemented the Revie plan, initially at youth level and later in the first team, which at the time was coached by Les McDowell. The plan basically consisted of converting Don Revie into the false number 9 of the team. This search for total football lost its momentum for a while, but eventually the idea returned, driven forward by Alfredo Di Stefano's Real Madrid, Helmut Schön in Germany, the Soviet school of trio Maslov, Beskov, Lobanovsky, and to a certain extent by Pelé's Santos. Arrigo Sacchi and Johan Cruyff then emerged to lead what became a football revolution, creating a game of positional play which inspired Louis van Gaal's 1995 Ajax side. But no team represents this style more than the Clockwork Orange, the Dutch national team coached by Rinus Michels and starring Cruyff, which was defeated in Munich in the 1974 World Cup final. Michels explains, "In the 70s, I was famous for using two strategies relating to the construction of the game and attack. These definitely left their mark on